For thousands of years in a galaxy far, far away, movies have made us laugh, made us cry, made us feel extremely awkward
when watching that sex scene with our parents.
No.
Let's all talk about films with a few guys you could just chill with. If you find a plot hole, they'll fill it right here on BRB Flix. Flix is a podcast for the silver screen. Yoshi rage quits while Jitterbug screams. Dave tries in vain to steer this machine, but the show digresses like it has ADD.
Welcome back. It's Big Red Flix, and we're still talking about Goodfellas because we can't wrap nothing up.
We're doing good. We are doing really good this episode. I just want to point that out.
We're like a half hour into the movie.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's too bad it's a 2.5 hour movie. So
that's funny.
We're doing better than we have been, but this is a great movie. There's no. I'm not going to speed this one up at the end like I did The Prophecy because there's no reason to, because this is movie merits.
Yeah, we did cover like 45 minutes of The Prophecy in 2 minutes.
Well, it's my superpower.
We really have to make up for lost time with those situations, though. That's just the nature. We spent way too much time talking about that already, and we're like, okay, it's the end. Let's be done with this.
So we're in Goodfellas. It's the famous scene, the thing that's parodied the most, the thing you hear people quote from this movie. The one quote I usually hear is, "What do you mean I'm funny?" Joe Pesci's sitting there. He's telling a funny story. I can't even remember the substance of the story. He's talking,
and he thinks he's so funny. That's the thing too. Is that
they did like some cop giving him crap, and he's like, "Oh yeah," and he said something like, "Oh yeah, go f*** your mother." Or something like
and that's the whole thing that about this scene. That's there's more that's unsettling, and I think Jitterbug has more insight into this than I do. But part of the point that is so unsettling about this is that, Tommy is telling a story that's meant to be funny, and Henry Hill points out that he's funny, and he gets mad about that. It's like saying, you give somebody a present, and it's like a really awesome present, and it's the present they wanted, and then they get mad about that. They're mad at you for buying the right present. Like, clearly Tommy is telling the story because it's a fucking funny story, and Henry says, you're a funny guy. That's a funny story. And he takes it in this weird personal way that turns. Jitterbug has said, and I'll let you speak for yourself, obviously, Jitterbug, but that this is a turning point in the movie, and I totally agree with you, because it's when you really see who Tommy is, and then it's when you really feel like, oh, shit, if I was in Henry Hill's position, what would I do?
Poop my pants.
Yeah, I'll let you take it away from there, Jitterbug, because I already kind of know your spiel on this, and I don't want to step on your toes, So
we know that, like we talked about, with this movie, you're put into Henry Hill's head. And we spent a lot of time discussing how the beginning of this movie is designed to make you comfortable with the world that Henry Hill is entering. So not only are you accepting of his decision to go into it, but you're also, with him doing the narration and explaining everything to you, you've sunk right into his character. He is your focal point in this movie. And also, any of the scenes that included violence up to this point have not included him being in danger. So you as the viewer have not gotten a sense of personal danger. Now, certainly there's things going on around you here and there, but it hasn't been directed at you. This is the turning point of the movie, and that's everyone quotes this and thinks that this is a big part of the movie because it's such a quotable line. But I think the reason that this really hits home with people, they don't even realize what's happening. This is the first moment that you as a viewer with this movie have become incredibly uncomfortable with what's happening. There's not an intense amount of violence, but this is the first moment where it's you that the violence is directed at, and you don't know what you did wrong. And the threat of violence is so real, even though there's no violence. You feel like, Pesci could pop off at any moment and just start doing something fucking crazy. It's like, part of like the fun of quoting this line and everything is that like this seething rage that Pesci has that he doesn't fully let out, but like the idea that you could compliment him for the thing that he was trying to do, and by doing that you could
up is so frightening. It's like, it reminds me of being like a little kid when you do something wrong and you don't know why it was wrong, and people are telling you, no, don't do that, that's stupid, you're not supposed to do that, and you feel so ashamed. Like, that's how I feel like Henry Hill's feeling here. Like, he's like, wait, what am I allowed to say to this guy? And that's why, we know, everybody knows someone like him, like Pesci's character, Tommy. Everybody knows someone who's like that. It's so touchy that, like, any little thing could set him off. But this dude's got a fucking gun, and he doesn't seem afraid to use it. So this is, you feel mortal terror during this scene. At least I felt that way.
This is the part of the movie where when I'm watching it with somebody else, and I want to pause the movie here when this scene is over and say, did you really catch how important this was, what you just saw and what you just felt? Because subconsciously, you as the viewer sat back and you disassociated yourself with Henry Hill here. You didn't even realize it happened. But the majority of us out there that watch this movie are in this scene. Henry Hill, like I said, is our focal character, and we see this world through his eyes, and suddenly we get this split where we can no longer 100% understand this scenario, because we have up to this point imagined ourselves sitting in Henry Hill's chair, and once he deals with this situation the way that he does, I think most of us would agree that I wouldn't have handled it that way. He takes it as a joke, and he calls out his Tommy DeVito's bluff here. And most of us wouldn't have the fortitude to do that. This would scare the living shit out of us. I don't want to hear anyone talk tough talk. Not that you guys would, but you know how, oh, no, I'd handle it. I would have kicked his ass or something.
Whatever, I'm not I would totally call his bluff. I'd be like, you know what? You want to do some stuff? We can do some stuff.
You would your pants in that situation.
I would totally poop my pants.
It's like, you're terrified. This guy is terrifying, and Henry Hill doesn't handle it the way that you would. He handles it in the way that these guys would. And it's the moment of the movie to where, from this point forward, it shifts, and now the violence can come in. Now you've been introduced into this world, and you thought you were comfortable, but you didn't know what the you were getting into. And this is such an important moment.
Yes, this is true. However, my take on the scene is just slightly different, because I think that Henry Hill is uncomfortable in this scene as well, and that he barely gets through this scene on his own. It's like, I get the feeling that Henry is sitting there going, oh, what do I do? Okay. Because he seems like he doesn't know exactly how to defuse Tommy here. And that when it finally all comes around to it, and he says whatever, like, you're full of shit, or fuck you, or whatever, like,
he says, get the fuck out of here. He goes, he sits back and he's like, get the fuck out of here. And Tommy goes, yeah, I almost had you. I almost had him, and that's the moment. That's the break.
But don't you think that Henry Hill, he does almost have him right there? Like, he looks a little nervous.
When he leans back in his chair and he says, get the fuck out of here, that's the moment right there when the audience splits from the character, and it's like, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have handled that situation that way, and I don't understand this anymore. I feel like this world is out of my control now, and that's the moment of the movie to where it's also the violence starts to come in, and now, you don't know what world you're about to get into. And one other thing that I have to point out, otherwise people will yell at me for not mentioning it, this is ad-libbed.
Right. Yeah.
Which is amazing. This scene is ad-libbed, tremendous. So hats off to the actors here that they ad-libbed this scene, because it's the best scene of the movie. And later on in the movie, much later, it comes in, the counterpoint to this scene is the spider scene, and that's where you see somebody doesn't handle it the right way and what happens to them.
God, I would argue that he doesn't really do anything different than what Henry Hill does. It has much more to do with
he
understanding
does.
he says the same thing, like, fuck off, but it's like that Henry Hill's allowed to say fuck off to Tommy.
Well, no, but Spider does it maliciously because he's mad. He's like, go fuck yourself or whatever.
But everybody kind of laughs it off except for Tommy, because he's a fucking insane killer. Like, that's the thing about this.
Right, but that's the thing. That's
you have to know how to deal with the insane killer.
No, the way that Henry Hill can handle it, but Spider can't, and we, the viewer, don't really get that much of a difference there. It's like, that's kind of the point. We can't survive in this world. We're Spider. Don't get it wrong. We are all Spider. We're killed on the floor, bleeding from, trying to stand up to Tommy. Henry Hill's able to survive. So, yeah, we can't handle it.
The owner of the proprietor of the delicatessen, or that's not delicatessen, it's a bar, that they're in says, hey, the waiter wants to come over here and wants you to square up your tab or your bill. And he's like, oh, just put it on my tab. He's like, oh, you can't do that. You owe me like $7,000. That's a lot of drinking right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this character and his coming in here at this perfect moment where we just barely by the skin of our teeth as a member of this group got out of a situation. Here comes a regular guy to get into a tough situation with Tommy, and you get to see Tommy explode. You get to see Tommy do what we just thought he might do to us.
Do to Henry, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So he's like, what, you want to come over here and act like I'm not going to pay in front of my friends?
Yeah.
So he hits him in the head with a beer bottle, I think it was.
So he hits him in the head with something breakable. That's all I remember.
Yeah, something glass and on the head, and then kicks him. Get the hell out of here.
And then if you notice, too, the people in the background are all laughing and, they're really excited about it. I think that's a great touch.
Yeah, because it's like, this fucking guy, huh?
Yeah, it's one of those don't you know who the fuck I am moments for Tommy that are just prevalent throughout this movie. Just kind of like, you're gonna mess with me, I'm gonna kill you. Like, I don't care. I don't have any moral compass. Like, Tommy has none. So it's perfect. Yeah, it comes in the perfect time. I totally agree.
And that's again getting back to the violence. This is where it starts in this movie, to where you're going to get a little bit of a respite as they introduce his wife here, but this is where things start to change, and we are introduced to this is the mob. Guys, we're not talking about just a bunch of Goodfellas or wise guys. We're talking about these are the mob.
Killers. Yeah, they're killers. They're killers who steal and kill and will kill you for saying the wrong thing. We'll shoot you in the chest for saying go f*** yourself or whatever Spider says. It's like, holy crap. I can't live in that world. I can barely handle it if one of my students says, oh, your hair looks crappy today or whatever. It's like, I couldn't handle this sort of level of scrutiny.
And that's when Yoshi pulls out his dick and slaps him across the face with it. Oh, you talking to me? What do you mean my hair looks funny? What are you saying?
Wow.
Is that not how it goes?
I don't know. You must have gone to a different type of high school than the one I teach at. Yours sounds like it's from like some sort of softcore porn, the Skinamax thing or something. Like
they do mushroom tattoos in softcore? I am seriously missing out.
I don't know. I
don't even know what a mushroom tattoo is.
I was able to derive its meaning from what he just said. I'm good at context clues, so I figured out what the mushroom would be, and then why there would be a tattoo after you get slapped by it. Okay, all right. Well,
seriously, Jitterbug, you don't know what a mushroom tattoo is?
I've never heard that phrase before. No.
Oh well, if you ever come to Texas, I will show you.
You're gonna give me a mushroom tattoo?
Right on your forehead.
Holy crap!
Gonna use my penis.
Anyways, the movie is really good, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah. No, right now we're talking about something far more important, which is my penis.
There's a really great Super Mario 1-up joke in there somewhere, but I can't figure it out, so let's just move on.
Let somebody else make it.
Oh, my mushroom will make you grow.
The mushroom does the growing.
No, there's a 1-inch cock joke in there somewhere. I can't quite figure it out.
So jam it in your eye. So next, the owner of the bar goes to Paulie to snitch on Tommy for beating the crap out of him. He's like, he's out of control, And
I think it's an interesting choice here that Henry Hill is in on this conversation.
Yeah.
But
yet does nothing.
Well, I don't know exactly the reason for that. I think it kind of puts you, the viewer, in kind of the mindset of, obviously Henry Hill is listening to him say this, and he's sitting there and kind of agreeing with him the whole time. And so maybe it takes you and it puts you back into, well, no, I'm not. I am on this guy's side. He wasn't the one that did that, It kind of puts you a little bit at ease that he's in on this conversation. He's not sitting there going, hey, f*** you, buddy.
Yeah. It allows his descent into awfulness to be, like, more gradual and then, therefore, more relatable. Like, in this scene, you're like, he's like, oh, well, he doesn't like what a dick Tommy's being either. Okay, I get it. He's still the good guy. it gives you a little respite. Shoot, I just used the word that you used a second ago. But yeah, it gives you a little respite from the idea that, oh wait, maybe these guys aren't. You go, oh well, Henry's different though. Henry's our boy. He's the one we're following. He doesn't approve of Tommy's behavior either. So okay, I can continue going on with him.
And there's even the scene where Paul Sorvino looks at him. Paulie looks at him and for. Like, did this really happen? Is he telling all the truth? And Henry Hill's like, yeah. Well, we were thinking maybe you would take over the restaurant with us. And so you do get this sense of Henry Hill being the good guy again. They give you that kind of abandonment of the violence. So, but the one part of this scene that I love is the way the restaurant owner hints that he wants him whacked. And then...
Well, no, he doesn't hint. He goes, well, he's like, well, I can't... He's like, they don't listen to me, the kids these days. And then Paul Sorvino goes, what do you want me to do? Kill him? He's like, well, yeah, that would be a good way to handle it.
He says, like, well, it wouldn't be such a bad thing or something to that effect. And
then Paul just looks at him and he's like,
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. I should have said that.
I love that part. Because it just feels really authentic. Like this restaurant owner who's always mixed up with these mob guys. They hang out at his place all the time, and he's like, maybe I can slide in here, and he should be whacked. Isn't that something that we do? It's like, what the f*** are you thinking? You can't say that.
Not this guy. You're not whacking Tommy. He's too important right now.
Well, anybody. I think that really the point there is, who the f*** are you? You're not in this. You're a restaurant owner. Get the f*** out of here. Yeah, you can't say that. So yeah, I love that the restaurant owner's acting in this scene. He does a really good job. So
next, it's all about credit card fraud. Essentially, they take out a bunch of credit in the restaurant's name and buy a whole bunch of crap and then sell it. Yeah. And it doesn't really make much sense to me. I figured they could have done better with the cheating. It's like, oh, we bought a box of booze for $200. We sold it for $1. Those are crackhead prices.
No, well, what you do here, it's a classic scam where you're just taking out credit. And then
I got that, but why didn't they just sell it, for a little closer to what they paid for it? Well, with the credit anyway.
Well, it doesn't matter because they're not even they're never going to have to recoup on the credit anyways, right? Isn't that the point?
The only point is to sell it as fast as you can.
It's because it's pure profit. Because the credit is all phony, so they're spending nothing, so they can sell it for whatever they want, and it stands to reason that you would sell it for less than its market price, so that you can offload it quicker.
Yeah, they're never going to pay those bills.
That's the way that I interpreted it. Because I think isn't there a line in there that says something like the fact that
they said it's all profit, but I was just wondering why they wouldn't want to make a little bit more profit.
Well, that's just the business. You're moving it as quick as you get it in. If you're holding on to inventory, you're doing it wrong in that business.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I think that's I agree. Yes.
So after they ruin the restaurant's credit and can't take out any more, they burn down the place for the insurance money.
And see, this is again where the voiceover is just telling you exactly what. If the voiceover wasn't there, you wouldn't miss this anyways. So it doesn't come out to where he's giving you information that you have to listen to him for. It's just, this is me talking about what's going on.
It leads to the character though. And then when he's sitting outside, what is he in an argument with Tommy about outside? I can't even remember.
Tommy wants him to go on a double date with him.
Right? And I love this that they're sitting there next to this building that they just they just are going to set fire to this. They're committing what's the word? Arson, yes. I wanted to call it arsony for some reason. It's like larceny and arson. No, they're committing arson, and they're having this just kind of like a conversation two buddies would have. Like, you got to go out with me with this girl, and you have to take the other one with because she doesn't want to go out with me.
There we go. It's always about you. He's like, oh no, it's always about you. Why can't it ever be about me?
And they're arguing, and then they notice, the place is on fire. We gotta go. And this is one of so many scenes where everyday mundane, boring that you would normally have in your own life is intermixed with this mobster and that also adds to the feeling that you could be part of this, even though you couldn't be. But you've done this before, probably. You guys have probably both done this. I know I've done this. Take a hit for the team where a dude wants to go out with a chick and you go on the double date to be the the other dude, and then maybe you're not that interested in the other girl, or maybe you do become interested, but you're kind of like, well, I'm being I'm here as this weird buffer, and it's such a relatable thing. And then, but burning down a restaurant is not relatable at all to me. So I love the contrast of those two things of like this total crazy mobster burning down a restaurant because you've f***ed up the credit because you're running the scam, and then a dude wants you to go out on this double date to make it more comfortable for him. It's like, God, what a awesome juxtaposition of everyday life and this weird up gangster life. I love it. It's so cool. And this happens so many times in the movie.
Yeah, well, I think the thing to point out there, because there's a lot of points in this movie, and in any great movie, to where you go right past it and you don't even think about how well done it is. And imagine if they were sitting in the car talking about some hit that went wrong, or some mobster thing that we the viewer can't relate to, that went wrong. And this is then they're like, oh, it's on fire, let's take off. This scene would fall completely flat if that's what they were talking about.
It wouldn't be nearly as interesting, and it wouldn't work for the characters. It's just the way they did it was. That's why we're having trouble critiquing this movie, is because this is what you should do.
And then it also, of course, leads us into the introduction to his wife, his eventual wife. So everything about it, and that's what you run into constantly in this movie. Is every scene, not only does it fit the scene perfectly, but it sets up the next scene perfectly, and it draws you into the movie exactly like it should. Like I said, I can't find faults in this movie.
And it's all natural. It's not like you feel like it's funny that this is a true story or based on a true story, because that makes sense, because everything leads to the next thing in such a logical way that you're never thinking, oh, well, that doesn't make sense, why is he doing that? You're thinking, oh yeah, of course that's what would happen, and then it also doesn't feel forced when we get introduced to his wife, and then they eventually they do the thing where they hate each other at first and then they start liking each other, which is normally like the most annoying movie cliche ever for a romance. But it feels totally normal here, because Henry's totally bored by her at first and doesn't really want to even be there, and then when it turns, it's all natural. It's just like you don't even think about that cliche until after the fact. That's
because she's an aggressive woman. Who doesn't like an aggressive woman? One that's willing to come down to the wise guy shop where you're hanging out in front of and almost run you over with a car and
that was pretty badass.
Jump all up in your because you stood her up. Oh, I thought that was next Friday. No, it was tonight.
Yeah.
And then he's all like, oh, hello.
And if we're going to go to that part, let me just put in here quickly that something happens in this movie right here that completely breaks any rule for filmmaking, where especially if you're going to delve into a voiceover, the last thing that you would ever think to do
is switch voiceovers?
Is midway through the movie switch to a different viewpoint. That's just a big no-no. And they do it here, and it works. Works
does.
Beautifully. And when they switched to her thought process, and he stood me up, and I'm watching this movie, and suddenly it's like, what the it's her talking.
Well, and I
love this, and it's like I do want to hear what she has to say about this,
and it's even necessary because it sort of shows that change over to the life from someone who's not in it.
Now it's introducing her, and it gives it. You're right. It gives you her story to allow you to see how. Okay, well, we saw how Henry Hill could get seduced into this life. Now let's look at the girl and how she got seduced into it. And once you get to the end of the movie, she's not quite as bad of a character, but just like the FBI guy points out, you're just as bad, honey. Don't lie to me. I've heard the wiretap.
We'll call it cahoots.
Visually, the scene that really, oh yeah, totally. But the thing that to me is the visual signifier at the end of the movie that she's, totally part of this.
But she's like, I need a hit?
No, it's when she puts the gun in her panties when the cops are coming. Like, it's
so hot.
Well, I don't know, maybe for some people. But I was more just thinking, wow, she just stuffed that gun right there. Like, you see where she comes from. And I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but like when she's at that party and she's like, the voiceover's making fun of all these other women for the way they are, and then she totally becomes that later. It's so interesting. And then the fact that she breaks in here, I think part of what's going on, unless I'm just really confused, is that Henry Hill and his wife are giving the testimony and that's like what the voiceover really is them talking to the agent.
Yeah, I don't think that's as important.
I don't know that that's as important, but in retrospect, that's how I viewed it. I was like, oh, this is her peeping up for her part of the story, you know.
And that at the very end, you get that, especially when he walks off the witness stand and starts talking directly to the camera, which again is a huge no-no. And how dare you end the movie with this?
But it works.
I don't want to talk about that yet, though, because that's the thing that I want to talk to you about later.
Okay, fine then. We'll talk about it later.
that was the thing.
Are you going to talk about how bad his makeup looks or something? He doesn't look like an old man.
No. I'm sure what Yoshi wants to talk about is that absolutely breaks every rule of filmmaking. You broke down the fourth wall and you're going to talk directly to the camera in the middle. It almost feels like... we'll get there when we get there.
In the middle of the most like real feeling movie I've seen in ages. That was what was... God, that just kicked me in the face. I was like, what? He's breaking the fourth wall? Yeah, Scorsese is fearless. Like, anyway, sorry.
But that ties into here though, because you're right. He's fearless, and how many times during this movie does he absolutely break cardinal rules of filmmaking? And this is another scene here where suddenly he switches viewpoints and voiceover in the middle of a film. You can't do that. You go back to film school and learn how to make a movie.
Can.
And it's like it's one of those things where you look at, and we'll get one of these days, we'll get into the Godfather movies, but you look at Francis Ford Coppola's doing the Godfather movies, and he's doing viewpoints from the camera that no human being that's standing there would be able to see. That goes against the code. You can't do that. I'm going to do it. That's the thing that Martin Scorsese does so well, and we'll get into the scene in the diner later here to where he breaks another rule. You can't do these things, but he does it, and it's perfect, and that's why he's a genius filmmaker.
And I would like to say, I don't know what Henry Hill's wife really looks like, but if she looked anything like the actress that plays Karen, he lucked out, because normally if you're the guy who's going the wingman on the double date, you're usually stuck with the fat, ugly friend with the hump and one eye.
Yeah, no, she's not bad to look at. I didn't think she was like...
No, she's not all that in a bag of potato chips, but
you're right. For being the whatever, the third wheel setup, that's not bad.
Oh no. Especially when she's all like chasing him down and hunting for him in front of with the homies around.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie where the car comes. I made him take me to go find Tommy and he or go find Henry, and they pull the car up and she gets out and starts yelling at him. And the thing that's I can't remember her name. I'm drawing a complete blank on. No. The actress's name.
Lorraine Bracco or
yeah, Lorraine Bracco, also from The Sopranos.
Right.
But I'm not a huge fan of her as an actress. I hate to say that because I like so many things that she's in, but a lot of times her delivery comes off stale. But in this movie, especially this scene where she comes out of the car and she's mad, and everyone around him is like, oh, I get such a visceral sense of that world. Like, I've been there before, where it's kind of hot out, and you're outside with your buddies, you're probably drinking a beer, enjoying yourself, and oh, there's this chick that's coming at you, and she's mad at you, but then they have like this almost flirtatious interaction, and suddenly she changes from being mad to, we'll see, and it's like,
it's gonna cost you.
Yeah, it's so real, and it feels like I've been in that situation, and I haven't been in a situation like that, but everyone in this scene does such a great job, and I don't know what it is about this movie that does this to me, but it feels like I'm the one who's living all this stuff, and maybe it comes because of the voiceover, but I can't point out very many movies that have had this effect on me to where I feel like I'm the one that was in that situation.
It's Han and Leia and Empire Strikes Back.
Oh my god.
It's the same.
My hands are dirty.
The same
too.
Dynamic, I mean, it's
everybody drink.
It's way more realistic in this film, but I mean, it's the same kind of like, ooh, we hate each other, but we actually really like each other. And that's what I was saying about this being such a cliche. And I would say, Empire is one movie that does this well, and then this movie does it incredibly well. I didn't even notice the cliche.
What you see here in Lorraine Bracco is the change. You see it in her acting, in her face. You see the way she, as an actress, goes from "I'm pissed at you" to I'd fuck you, and she goes through that progression, and you see it happen, and it's just congratulations, Lorraine Bracco. This is your finest moment. It's really well done.
And next is the scene Jitterbug alluded to last episode, I believe it was, when we were talking about the long one shot. And it's the one where they go to the Copacabana and they go in through the back door. But it's one long shot of them going through the back door, through the kitchen.
And you know, the only reason they went through the back door was because they couldn't get the club to allow them to shoot the front of the building. It's one of those beautiful accidents, that happen in great movies. I'm
assuming you've seen Swingers, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene in Swingers when they're walking through a kitchen in the same exact way, and they're talking about that scene while they're doing that scene, and talking about how hard it would be to light that, and like, how would you even do that? It's such a great meta scene in Swingers where like all these movie buffs are talking about what a genius Scorsese is to do this while they're actually doing that. Later on, they allude to that too about filming in a casino, stuff like that. Like, it's really, I don't know. I'm sorry to bring Swingers into this, but I thought of that immediately. I was like, oh, this is like the part in Swingers when they talk about this scene that I hadn't seen until now, because I'm an awful person for never seeing Goodfellas up to this point.
Yeah, it is. You can't say enough about this scene. When we talked about the long cut before, where they were going into the club and they were introducing all the mobsters, and I said there's certain things you can point out that there were mistakes here and there. There's no mistakes here. Everything hits its mark. Every single person that's doing it, and it's a long scene. Even getting up to Benny Youngman doing his bit up on stage, and it's like, how? Why would you even try this? It's like as a not as a filmmaker, and I'm doing air quotes. Not as a filmmaker, but as a businessman. You have millions of dollars tied up with your camera crew and your actors and all of this different stuff, and you're going to do this insanely long single cut take that, of course, shit's going to go wrong. There's no way you can do this scene without stuff going wrong constantly. And you're going to get to the end, and one of the famous stories about the scene is that they would get to the end, and Youngman would up his line up on stage, and it's like, well, start over, because fucking Youngman, he screwed up his line, and can you imagine that? And
want to kill him.
And that would happen. So this scene has become taught in film school, admired by filmmakers all across the world. It's talked about endlessly and reproduced again and again to dramatic effect. But what it does is it brings you, the viewer, into that head. Again, you're in Henry Hill. You're with them. You feel like you're the one walking behind them through that kitchen, and everyone's kind of, they respect you, and you get to get this great table right in front of the stage, and it draws you immediately into the character. And we've talked before about Serenity. Serenity, Joss Whedon did the same thing in that movie, where when he first introduces all of the characters, once you get onto Serenity and you see Malcolm, they take you through this same thing and they introduce every single character in the same fashion. I'd just like to point that out as another example of this being done tremendously well. They do such a good job in that movie, too.
And this also shows you, like, sort of like him becoming like Jimmy, who was kind of his hero when he was a kid. He's walking around, oh, here's $20 for you, $20 for
totally.
you, $20. And she's like, you gave all of those guys a 20. And he's like, yeah, forget about it. And she's like, so what do you do? Oh, I work in construction.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love the way he did that. It plays it off so just, I work, just don't ask me any other questions about it. Just don't worry about it.
You don't have hands for construction. Well, I do stuff for the union or something like that.
Awesome.
I think one of her lines, I think it comes a little bit later, but it's one of my favorite lines in the movie, is where she explains that everyone wanted to give him things or be nice to him, and he knew how to handle it.
I think this was about around that time. She's like, because they were like sitting in a car. I think it was shortly after. No, it was a little later, because somebody sends them over some champagne or something.
And her point is, and he knew how to handle it. And I just love that line. For whatever reason, that line speaks volumes to me. He knew how to handle it. It's just, I'm not a woman, but that makes my vagina wet.
Ray Liotta does it for you.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm telling you. But I don't know. I love that. I love that line. I think that's great.
And the next scene, you see them steal $400,000 from Air France, because apparently they had some bills that were being sent back to the United States as transfer currency. And they did it. We did it with no guns. Nobody got hurt. It was great. And we gave Paulie his cut.
Yeah, that's the one that made them, I think, is the line they said.
This made us. We're so money and we don't even know it.
$60,000. That's a lot for a kid like you. Yeah.
Oh no! He gave Paulie $60,000.
Yeah.
The rest was his and Jimmy's and what's his nuts? Tommy's.
What's his nuts?
Yeah, and this also introduces a couple other the ancillary characters that will come into play a little later. But that airport was very important to this gang. They say that Lufthansa they used to pull stuff out of there constantly. And anything that went through, they always had the manifest. They knew what was coming in, and they would take whatever they wanted from it. This was back before the FBI became incredibly involved in trying to take down the mob, and before they put in all the RICO laws and all that kind of stuff. So, kind of fair game on a lot of this, and they lived like kings off this sort of stuff.
And next a commercial with Maury's wigs.
Yeah.
The horrible commercials, like with the jump cut that shows his wig not falling off his head, but he's clearly dry. It's awesome.
When you watch it with the audio from Henry Hill and the FBI agent, one of the things that I was really surprised by, and I don't think they did a good job of getting across in the movie, is that Henry Hill and this guy were great friends. And Henry Hill loved him. It's the only time during the entire audio of this movie with Henry Hill that he sounds like he's getting choked up. Is when this guy dies, when he gets stabbed by Tommy. Is that, I love that guy. I had a lot of respect for him. He was incredibly smart.
No, they made him look like a buffoon. Yeah, and also, like, you were saying earlier about the guy who's the business owner, the restaurant owner who comes in is like, yeah, no, that would be a good idea if you whack him, maybe. And then they're like, what? No, you don't get to say that kind of stuff. You get this feeling this entire time with this character that he's sticking his nose in places and he just needs to shut the up because he's going to get killed, and then he does, and you're not surprised. You're like, this guy's a douchebag. Like, that was the thing, is for a little while I was like, wait, is this the same guy who was in the commercial earlier? Like, I actually didn't make the literal connection. Like, I was like, this is some doofy guy. I didn't realize he was going to play such a big part. And then when he does, you're kind of surprised because, like, how does he last as long as he actually does? It seems odd that he makes it because he says all the wrong things. I'm shocked that Tommy doesn't kill him sooner,
Actually, I'm surprised Jimmy didn't kill him right here, because then right after they show the crappy commercial, he he's like, I don't have the money, and then Jimmy gets pissed and decides to start choking him out. Get the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, okay, I'm gonna. You know what? I will admit, there's one. Okay, I found it. There is one thing in this movie that I'm not crazy about. I'm not crazy about Ray Liotta's reaction to when Jimmy first starts choking him. You know how he starts laughing?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel 100% natural. I will admit that's one thing that I've never felt absolutely natural. And I get that we're trying to start making a switch with Henry to where we're no longer 100% with him. But the idea that I'm going to laugh at you, as you start getting choked, it almost who would do that? I don't know. It's a really small quibble. Maybe that's the one moment
that character would do that. I think that he's at that point. Like, I don't have a problem with that. And I was going to ask you, but you already said that this has always bothered you. But I was wondering if that was the fact that this bothers you is colored by the fact that the real Henry Hill said that he loved this guy so much, and that wouldn't make sense. Because the way I looked at this is I was like, oh, there's Jimmy choking someone. He's the strong arm guy, right? And so, he's watching this and he's kind of laughing to try to make it so it's like, he's not going to really kill him, but, he's going to scare the shit out of him. And, he's kind of okay with this at this point.
Scorsese's a smart enough director that every scene means something and everybody's reaction means something in this movie. So when Henry Hill laughs here, it has to be that Scorsese is trying to say to you, this guy's psychotic. He's laughing at this sudden violence, and this guy is being choked.
Well, it's not that he's psychotic; it's that he's part of this culture. They don't think of that as being psychotic.
Well, yeah, but he laughs earlier when Tommy hits that dude in the head with the bottle, and
I don't think this is an indication of his psychotic nature. I think this is more of an indication of how deeply embedded he is in the mob life.
Why this hits me so much is because this is where I start to have a problem with it. Maybe that's my own personal thing, is that the scene where, in the bar where he's having that confrontation with Tommy sets me off edge, and maybe this is the moment where I break completely. Because myself, when I see him start to laugh at him, that's when I start disliking the character, personally. So I don't know. Maybe that's why this strikes me so hard. But it's always left that kind of bad taste in my mouth. And it could totally, and it's effective because it's meant to be there. And later on in the movie, from now on, we are delving into this. He's a bad character at this point.
The dark side. This is his fall.
Of course, we're going to get well. Then we get this next scene, which I think us three guys could all agree is, it's kind of like it's like a fantasy for a guy. Yeah. Not that we want our women to be raped or anything, but yeah, I'm going to stick up for my woman. And the dude that wants to hurt you is going to piss his pants when I come after him, and he ain't never going to touch me.
Oh, when he goes across the street to the guy who's
let's go. Let's set it up. Somehow Karen knows where he is, even though he's at Maury's place choking him out. So she calls him from a payphone and says that something happened. So he picks her up and she's like, "What happened?" And she got assaulted. The guy did not rape her.
And we met this guy earlier, like at some other place. Like it was like some sort of maybe a club, it was country club or something. It was, and like he's like, who's that or whatever, and she's like, oh, it's this guy.
He lives across the street from me,
a nice Jewish boy or whatever it is that just does, yeah. And so, but yeah, no, this scene is it's like it's a weird fantasy. Like you don't obviously want your woman to be attacked, but
if it happens, you're totally going to walk across the street and pistol whip the I mean, it's vicious.
So badass.
This is why that other scene exists. The scene where he comes up to them at that club and at the pool and says hello, and then Henry's like, "Who's that guy?" And you clearly see that Henry is saying that as, "Who the is this guy?" Why are you talking to this dude?
Don't talk to that dude. You're my bitch.
All of us men, I've got to think, have had that feeling at some point. I know when my wife and I first started dating, I had an incident at a bowling alley where some dude that she knew came up to her and was like, "Hey, how you been?" And she afterwards, she's like, "Why were you such a dick to him?" And I totally didn't mean to be. It's just like that's naturally we're incredibly defensive.
I think and I think that's also something that's more of like a young man's thing. Like I remember when I was younger and I had girlfriends, that would be like the thing. I think I don't want to say that I got mature or something because that sounds so fucking pretentious, but like at a certain point I became okay with my girlfriends having guy friends that were vaguely threatening or whatever. I was like, whatever, if she wants to ditch me then that's her own fucking thing. But there were times where I was like, why are you talking to that guy? Like especially like in high school, it feels like a high school thing almost to me, or college at least, where you're so insecure that you're just like, why is she talking to this other guy? She should be talking to me. Like what's this guy doing here?
I never really had sort of that insecurity problem, but I did not like your girlfriend's going to have male friends. It's going to happen. It happens. But I wasn't very jealous, but I did not like really, in a real mobster, so to speak. I didn't like being disrespected. Having a friend of hers who I knew liked her, like hit on her in my presence.
Front of you, yeah.
And it's like, that's one of the things that made me want to have a, snub nose 38 in my pants so I could pistol whip him to death.
The thing here is that the reason that they give you that scene to where Henry Hill clearly has a problem with this guy coming up and talking to his girlfriend is because even if we don't want to admit it definitely taps into all guys feel that way. We all do, we've all felt that feeling.
Because at this point in our lives, I don't think any of us do. Like, I wouldn't say that I would be.
The reason that's there is because we can relate to the character. We've all had that. Not only can we then relate to that situation, but we also get our fantasy fulfilled, in which we go and we beat the living shit out of the guy. And that's what this next scene is. It's that male fantasy that's being given. I protect
It's like the
woman.
monkey beating the other monkey with a stick or with the bones in 2001.
Every guy in the world with a dick responds to that. Yeah, I want that. I want to beat the out of you.
Yeah, because he walks up to the guy. The guy's like, "What? You want to do something?" And he pulls the pistol out of his pants and just bashes the guy in the face with it. Like,
there's not even a pause. That's the brilliant thing about that.
The guy has no clue what he's dealing with.
And Henry Hill in the audio where he's talking about that scene, he explains that this all happened, and of course this is all according to him, but he's like, yeah, I remember how that happened. Those two guys that were standing around, they didn't stick around, they took off. As soon as I hit him, they ran. It's like, this dude, he doesn't stop, and primal is the right word for it. He goes in, he's absolutely the male fantasy, he is our testosterone. He goes in, and you want to with my woman? I will beat the out of you. You are dead
mercilessly. It's just so brutal.
As a guy, it pulls you right back into that character. Like,
isn't this the first time that we see him commit some sort of violent act? And because
he blows up some cars as a kid, but they never show him.
This is the only time where Ray Liotta and that part of the Henry Hill character does something this vicious. And by framing it this way, as Jitterbug is saying that all guys can relate to, it makes us kind of excuse it a little bit. Like, okay, this guy's a little hothead, and he's used to getting what he wants, and
not only that, he did exactly in this situation what I wish in my fantasy that I would do. You attack my girlfriend. This is it. I'll be totally honest. More than likely, what I would do is I'd go confront him, and then we'd talk back and forth. He'd say, what are you going to do? And, I'd get mad at him, and maybe we'd end up getting in a fight, but that's sure the wouldn't be the first thing I'd do. Too much of a pussy for that. But he pulls out a gun and pistol whips the fucker into submission, and it's like, oh my God.
And then he says, if you ever touch my girlfriend again, I will fucking kill you.
Yeah, and there's no question. Of course he will.
Yeah,
he will.
No, you don't doubt his convictions here, and I think this ties in perfectly to the scene earlier on when his dad finds out he hasn't been going to school, and they're just like, all right, bring the mailman in here. We're gonna fucking beat the shit out of him so he never deals with you again, never bugs you again. It's the same mentality. It's just like, what? He's fucking with you? Let's beat the shit out of him and convince him that if he does it again, he'll die. And that will stop everything.
This actually kind of reminds me of a scene I saw. It was from a I don't know, call it a traffic cam, but a security camera that was in a park in, I think it was England. And this guy was walking along with his girlfriend, and this other guy was walking with his buddy, and they were talking. And the dude they were going to pass each other, and the dude stuck his arms out to demonstrate something he was talking about, and hit the girl in the face.
Oh,
and her boyfriend went ape.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, you just see these punches. I mean, he was beating the shit out of these guys. They're like, whoa, dude. And he's like, I mean, he was like a fucking robot. He's just coming.
Yeah, it was, and I believe it was very accidental.
Yeah, he accidentally hit that girl in the face, and her boyfriend was just like, oh, you.
What fraternity was he in?
I don't know.
Sorry, that was bad. I just made fun of a bunch of frat boys. I just assume if a guy is randomly beating up some other guys, he's probably in a frat. But
so this is also a scene I would like to say that Ray Liotta is terrific in this scene. Now, of course, you can make the argument that he does a great job throughout the whole movie, but this scene in particular,
he's terrifying.
The way he does this scene and the look on his face is just fantastic. And he's done some other things later on in his career where he's the bad guy, and he does a good job as that, but I think this is a shining moment for him here. He's threatening and violent and scary in this scene.
I agree. Well, it is time for us to wrap up episode 3, which is part 2 of Goodfellas, and we'll be back next week with the third part of this movie. And maybe the last, who knows? We could go 4 parts. But we'll see you then.
All right.
You and your ears are quite welcome for the podcasting goodness that you just heard. Why not roll on over to BigRedBarel.com for more podcasts, news, reviews, and videos from the biggest, reddest site on the internet, BigRedBarel.com.